The stars hung motionless beyond the armored glass of the Ravager flagship, their cold light casting a dull glow across the blackened steel of the command bridge. Massive tactical displays pulsed with red symbols, each one marking a Ravager vessel. In perfect formation, 300 warships, arranged like a noose around the Proxima colonies. Warlord Kyx stood at the center of it all, his four arms crossed behind his broad back, his scaled shoulders rising and falling with the slow, deep rhythm of his breathing. Clad in war-forged obsidian armor and a mantle of bone trophies, Kyx looked every bit the butcher he was known to be. 17 systems had fallen to his fleet. 17 governments had bent or burned. He hadn't faced real resistance in years. Only surrender or extinction. Now, Proxima lay ahead an easy target. A few human outposts, scattered settlements, civilian transport lines. No fleet presence, no planetary shields. Nothing but meat. Status, he growled. His first officer, a wiry, three-eyed tactician named Skell, clicked his mandibles. Long-range scans complete. Human colony traffic is shutting down. Civilian evacuations confirmed. No warships detected except ... 1. Kyx turned, one brow ridge rising. 1? Skell nodded. At the outer edge of the system, it's holding position. No transponder. Designation reads UES Yorktown. It's single quotes S ... small. 400 meters at most. Profile suggests minimal armament. There was a beat of silence. Then Kyx laughed, a deep, guttural sound that echoed across the bridge like rolling thunder. The rest of the crew followed suit, filling the chamber with cackling, chittering noise. 1 ship? Kyx bellowed. The humans have lost their minds. 1 ship to face the Ravager fleet? Laughter swelled again, but not all joined in. Eh? Few officers glanced toward the tactical display, where the Yorktown sat like a dead rock in the dark, unmoving, alone. Its hull looked patched together, its silhouette crude and unimpressive, more like a salvager's freighter than a military vessel, but it hadn't moved. It hadn't run. And that made some of them uneasy. Kyx strode to the display, his lower arms folding while his upper set gestured. Look at it. No armor banks, no escort, no escorts at all. This is insult, not defense. They dared to mock us. Skells. Mandibles twitched. Warlord, it's not transmitting. No ID beacon, no distress, no IFF ping. It's just ... watching us. Watching, Kyx repeated, narrowing his eyes, or waiting. He stared at the image. The Yorktown hung at the edge of the star system like an insect pinned in amber. No visible movement. No threat posture. Not even a broadcast. Perhaps, Kyx muttered, his voice quieter now, the humans have something new. Something desperate. Still, the Warlord's confidence did not waver. It couldn't. Not after the victories. Not after the worlds he had raised and conquered. Send a destroyer to scan it, he ordered. Full spectrum. I want to know if that thing even has life support. As the orders went out and the first wave of ships adjusted course, Kyx stepped back toward his throne, his voice booming once more through the bridge. 1 ship, he repeated, a cruel smile cutting across his scaled face. Let it be a warning. The humans think they can frighten wolves with a single bark. But still, the Yorktown didn't move. Still, it waited. And for the first time in a long, victorious campaign, the Ravagers felt something just beneath their laughter. A whisper. Of unease. The bridge of the Ravager flagship had quieted. The laughter had faded, leaving behind a tension that coiled in the air like plasma smoke after a failed ignition. On the main display, the UES Yorktown remained exactly where it had been motionless. At the edge of the Proxima system, its boxy, salvaged-looking frame bathed in cold starlight. 300 warships loomed before it, Ready to reduce entire continents to ash. The destroyer Kyx had ordered forward. The Fangs of Heaven was already en route. It closed the distance with arrogance in its vector, its weapons charged, its scanners reaching out across the void. A ship like the Yorktown shouldn't have been able to withstand more than a warning shot, but nothing was ever that simple. Warlord, Skell said, his tone sharper now, the humor drained from it. The destroyer is experiencing irregular returns. Their telemetry is degrading as they approach. External sensors are blind at 10,000 kilometers. Blind? Kyx asked, standing again. Yes, Warlord. Their sensor arrays are returning corrupted data structure scans loop endlessly. Thermal readings vanish into black zones. They report that something is interfering, but there's no emissions, no cloaking, nothing the computers can identify. Kyx's lower hands grip the edge of his command console. Have them do a passive pulse sweep. I want the shape of that thing. From nose to engine wake. Before Skell could respond, a soft, pulsing chime echoed through the bridge. A new signal had appeared. A communication dot from the Yorktown. On screen, Kyx ordered. The display flickered. The feed resolved slowly, as if reluctant to reveal it. Sender. Then, the image of a human woman appeared middle-aged, slightly weathered, with graying black hair pulled back into a utilitarian knot. Her face was calm, tired, undecorated by war paint or medals. She wore a simple uniform, unadorned, unthreatening. Her voice was even, almost conversational. This is Captain Maria Santos of the UES Yorktown. Silence stretched across the Ravager bridge as the Warlord's officers absorbed the absurdity of her tone. No panic, no demands, no apology. Warlord Kyx, she continued, I'm afraid I can't allow you to proceed to the Proxima colonies. And, with that, the room exploded again into derisive laughter. Even Skell couldn't stop the ripple of amusement that passed through his mandibles. Kyx threw his arms wide and laughed until his fangs glistened with spit. Captain Santos, he said, once he caught his breath, are you aware that you are addressing a fleet capable of sterilizing worlds? Yes, she replied, her tone unshaken. I've been monitoring your fleet for the last 7 days. You have 300 ships, impressive formation discipline, reasonable fire control. Though I have to ask, do you really need that many ships to attack a farming colony? The laughter faltered. Something in the casual way she said it, without judgment, without fear, cut through the noise like a blade. A few of Kyx's officers exchanged glances. Skell's third eye blinked. Kyx growled. Captain, you have 1 minute to retreat before I demonstrate the price of human arrogance. Captain Santos tilted her head slightly, as though puzzled by his threat. Then, slowly, she leaned forward toward the feed. Her eyes, unremarkable seconds ago, now seemed bottomless, calculating. Cold and steady as steel. Warlord, she said softly, I need you to understand something important about human naval doctrine. Every Ravager officer leaned forward. Instinctively. We don't send ships to die gloriously. We send them to win, Kyx sneered. You can't win with one ship. Santos's lips curved just slightly. Not a smile. A correction. No, she said. We win with one ship that's worth 300 of yours. And then the Yorktown moved, only slightly. Just a subtle shift in its orientation, barely more than a yaw correction. But the shift triggered something. Invisible. Every sensor array in the Ravager fleet lit up with danger warnings. Dozens of threat markers painted the entire battle space in crimson. Suddenly, all 300 ships were being scanned individually, rapidly, precisely. Targeting solutions began forming on every hull, with mathematical accuracy that bypassed Ravager encryption protocols entirely. The Yorktown, it seemed, had already done the math. Warlord, Skell whispered, pale membranes across his eyes twitching. I think it's aiming at all of us, simultaneously. That's not possible. No, Warlord, Skell replied, voice thin. It's not possible for us. For the first time in his long reign of destruction, Kyx felt uncertain. He opened his mouth to bark another order, but then he saw it. From the Yorktown's midsection, sections of armor began to unfold not as crude panels, but like precision-forged petals of a mechanical flower. The hull opened gracefully, revealing weapon mounts unlike anything in Ravager databanks. Massive cannons, radiant energy nodes, missile pods with unknown configurations, all of them cold, all of them patient, and at the very center of the ship humming. With impossible energy sat a weapon that didn't belong in this century. A cannon the length of the ship's spine, wreathed in magnetic fields and energy siphons pulling directly from a contained star core. Kyx's mouth went dry. Impossible. He whispered on screen. Santos simply said, "Do not proceed to Proxima." And the Yorktown locked on. The Ravager fleet hovered like a storm waiting to break. 300 warships arranged in lethal harmony, frigates, cruisers, dreadnoughts, and carriers, all bristling with weapons and confidence forged in blood. But in that moment, no one moved, no one breathed. The Predator had caught a glimpse of something older, colder, and vastly more dangerous than itself. The UES Yorktown, still small against the backdrop of stars, had begun to open. It didn't unfold violently, didn't roar or flare. No, this was precision without spectacle. The plating that had seemed scavenged now moved with the grace of intentional design. Segments rotating, separating, slotting back on mechanical arms as if the ship were exhaling after a long sleep. Hull sections once dismissed as scrap now revealed. Weapon arrays so advanced the Ravager computers failed to classify them. Systems began lighting up in colors the fleet's interfaces had never used, codes for unknown, untracked, unmeasured technologies, and it was still silent on the Ravager flagship. The bridge crew stared in horrified fascination. The tactical display blinked red, all ships painted, all systems targeted. A wave of digital panic rolled through the fleet, encryption keys crumbling under the Yorktown scans. Even vessels in stealth mode had been identified and marked. Kyx leaned forward on his throne, his forehands splayed wide on the armrests. Skell, he growled, though his voice lacked its usual fire. How is it doing that? Skell's voice was faint. Unknown, Warlord. It's not just tracking us, it's predicting us. Every course, every fallback pattern, every countermeasure. It's already prepared for them. The Yorktown's forward cannon began to hum a low, steady thrum that reverberated across the void and into the hulls of Ravager ships like a whisper of judgment. Lines of energy spider-webbed across the cannon's core, drawing from the miniature star anchored in the ship's heart. The gravimetric field surrounding it distorted sensor readings, making the surrounding space shimmer like heat haze. Kyx's second officer, a brutal-clawed brute named Velk, stomped forward. Fire on it now, before it finishes arming. But even as he shouted, new weapon bays bloomed open across the Yorktown's flanks. Beams rotated silently, locked in formation, each tracking a separate ship. The targeting lasers weren't red. They weren't green. They were invisible subspace tagging pulses, threading through armor, calculating impact vectors that ignored traditional shielding, and then came the voice. Santos. Still calm, still seated, still reading off numbers like she were reciting coordinates. For a supply drop, you are currently being tracked by 314 independent weapon systems. Kill confirmation cycles have been completed. I repeat, this is your final opportunity to withdraw. Kyx barked. You wouldn't dare. One ship, Warlord, Santos interrupted, her tone sharpening just slightly. Do not misunderstand. This is not an act of desperation. This is an act of precision. You are not facing a fleet. You are facing an answer. The cannon fired not at the fleet, not in anger, but a demonstration. A single pulse beam shot forth like a column of blue-white fire, silent and straight, striking 3 destroyers with surgical precision. No explosion, no wreckage. Just evaporation. One moment the ships existed, the next they were replaced by spreading clouds of plasma dust and disrupted magnetic fields. The tactical screen screamed. 3 kills. No debris. No warning. Just gone. Kyx froze. Velk staggered back, mouth wide. On every ship, captains stared at their own sensor feeds, unable to believe what they were seeing. Warlord. Skell breathed. That wasn't even a full volley. Kyx clenched his fists. She's trying to terrify us. Bluffing. No, Skell said slowly, his voice heavy with dread. She's not bluffing. She's teaching. The Yorktown didn't. Advanced. It didn't follow up. It waited. Weapon systems remained locked, humming quietly like a beast that had only stretched once. The Yorktown was still unmoving, but it had already won the battlefield. Its silence wasn't weakness. It was authority. New transmission incoming. Skell said. Put it through, Kyx ordered. His voice hollow. Santos appeared again, this time with a faint crease on her brow as if she were mildly disappointed. That was a warning shot. Warlord Kyx. The next one won't be. I suggest you use the time wisely. She leaned back, eyes drifting off screen. The feed cut. No bravado. No threat. Just an undeniable truth left in the wake of silence. Kyx looked to his officers. They stared back, awaiting orders. The stars outside no longer felt like open sky. They felt like a trap that had already been sprung. And still, the Yorktown did not move. Silence gripped the Ravager fleet. It wasn't the silence of waiting or discipline or calculated calm. It was the silence of a predator realizing it had just stepped into another's den. 300 warships, each forged from centuries of conquest and savagery, floated in formation. Surrounded by the glow of distant stars and the icy black that now seemed more like a graveyard than a battlefield. At the center of that tension sat the UES Yorktown, unflinching, unmoving, and utterly dominant. In the command bridge of the Ravager flagship, Kyx stood frozen, staring at the still active tactical display. His thick, armored hands hovered above the console, claws twitching in indecision. His 4 eyes flicked between sensor readings and threat diagnostics, each one repeating the same terrifying truth. The Yorktown was not a warship. It was a lesson. Skell broke the silence first, his voice slow and mechanical, like he was forcing himself to speak against instinct. Warlord. We are still receiving targeting pings from the Yorktown. The number of weapon systems has increased. It now registers 334 firing nodes. That's more than it showed before, muttered Velk from across the bridge. Is it building more weapons? No, Skell replied. It just hadn't shown us everything yet. Kyx stepped forward, lower arms clenching the railing around. His command throne. Give me a full schematic breakdown. I want every weapon signature mapped, every energy reading charted now. Skell hesitated. We can't, Warlord. Our AI cores are failing to render accurate simulations. The Yorktown is projecting a counter-scan field. It's not just hiding information. It's feeding us data loops we can't parse. You mean? We're blind, Kyx snarled. We're worse than blind, Skell said. We're seeing exactly what it wants us to see. The Warlord looked up at the screen again, his gaze falling on that unassuming gray box in the stars. It wasn't just a ship. It was confidence incarnate. And it was reshaping everything he thought he knew about warfare. Explain to me, he growled. "How one ship is capable of this." Skell turned, drawing up what little information they had gathered. "It's built around a singular doctrine, Warlord. Human naval doctrine isn't about intimidation through numbers. It's about the illusion of vulnerability followed by overwhelming retaliation. They call it strategic overmatch." Kyx bared his teeth. "A bluff." "No," Skell whispered. "A deterrent." He tapped a key, and a declassified communication file flickered into view on the secondary display. It was a speech, translated into Ravager language by a human admiral decades prior. "When humans enter a battlefield, we don't seek to match strength, we exceed it by an order of magnitude. Because we learn the hard way, in space, no one hears your cries for help. So we stopped crying. We built weapons that don't require second chances. If we send a ship, it doesn't fight wars. It ends them." Kyx's breath caught, and that's when the Yorktown moved again, not an attack nod yet. Instead, its dorsal spine began to glow with intricate golden tracery, lines of energy running from bow to stern. The star core at its center pulsed rhythmically, sending surges of light through power conduits the size of Ravager dropships. The entire ship seemed to shift frequency, as if phasing just slightly out of normal space. The bridge's gravity field buckled for a split second. Across the Ravager fleet, command decks flickered, lights dimmed, and shield arrays fluttered like dying hearts. "What is it doing?" Velk shouted. Skell's eyes widened. "I think it's sinking with us." And then, impossibly, it happened. Yorktown spoke not with voice, but through code. Thousands of encrypted messages flooded every Ravager ship in under a second. Not words, not threats, tactical weaknesses. Each message was a mirror. The Yorktown had sent each captain a detailed schematic of their own ship's vulnerabilities, flaws in armor, blind sensor angles, reactor instability points. It knew them. It knew everything. "They're telling us how they would kill us." Skell whispered. Kyx stared at the data feed. A slow dread poured into his veins like ice water. On the main screen, Captain Santos appeared once more. She said nothing for a moment. Then, softly, with no inflection of pride or cruelty, she spoke. "This is what we mean by overmatch. You can run. You can stay. But understand this, you are not facing a single ship. You are facing a perfected solution to a galaxy full of problems like yours." The Yorktown shifted again. New pods opened beneath its hull. Microfighters, unmanned and armed, launched in perfect silence, not to engage. To demonstrate scale, there were hundreds. Kyx stepped back. "I want full fleet comms. All ships." "Yes, Warlord." He stared at the Yorktown, heart pounding. "Tell them. Brace for immediate withdrawal protocols." The Ravager fleet had never once retreated, but now the Ravager doctrine itself was broken, all because one ship taught them fear without even firing a second shot. And still, the Yorktown did not pursue. The order to withdraw rippled through the Ravager fleet like a crack in the hull of their pride. For 17 campaigns, they had carved their name across the stars, pillaging, burning, and brutalizing weaker systems under the iron rule of Warlord Kyx. No fleet had ever stood against them. No enemy had ever survived first contact. Retreat wasn't in their doctrine. Until now. On the flagship, Kyx stood like a statue cracked down the center, his towering frame barely masking the roiling storm within. The word retreat still burned on his tongue, sour and alien. Around him, his officers scrambled to comply, sending rapid-fire orders to the fleet change course. Retract weapons, initiate warp drives. But every movement was shadowed by the presence of that one ship, the UES Yorktown, still motionless, still watching, still humming with a star in its chest. 100 escape vectors lit up the tactical display. The Ravager fleet had scattered in every direction possible, like a school of fish reacting to a shark's presence. And yet, the shark did not move. The Yorktown didn't fire, didn't follow, didn't threaten. It simply remained, as if to say, "You're not worth the energy." It was the most insulting kind of dominance. Kyx's throat tightened as Santos's words echoed in his head. "You're not facing a single ship. You're facing a perfected solution to a galaxy full of problems like yours." Still seated at his throne, Kyx turned to Skell, who was frantically coordinating the retreat protocols. "Are we being pursued?" Skell glanced at the sensors. "No, Warlord. The Yorktown is stationary. Targeting systems are still active, but its weapons have gone idle." "Idle? Not powered down, just waiting." Kyx gritted his teeth. "Why isn't she firing? Why let us leave?" Skell's mandibles twitched. "Because she doesn't need to. She's already rewritten the battlefield." Across the fleeing fleet, captains sat in stunned silence. Some wept, some raged. Others simply stared at the data the Yorktown had sent kill files, one for each Ravager vessel, detailing exactly how the ship would be destroyed, down to the second. The Yorktown hadn't just threatened them, it had dissected them and spared them. On the main screen, a new message arrived. It wasn't a live feed. It was a simple visual. Santos's voice layered over footage of deep space, calm and eternal. "You'll tell others. That's what we want. Let them know we are not a frontier species anymore. We are not prey. Not colonists waiting for mercy. We are the wall now. Come for us again, and we won't send ships to fight you. We'll send solutions." The transmission ended. The Yorktown still floated in silence, the soft glow of its inner systems radiating. Like a distant sun, from that ship no war cries had come. No grand speeches, no vengeance. Just knowledge. Just finality. Kyx sat back heavily in his throne, the metal creaking beneath him. He had not been defeated in battle. He had been dismissed. He opened his personal war log, claws shaking slightly as he typed the first line. "Encounter at Proxima. Fleet status broken. Opposition 1 ship. Outcome: tactical humiliation, strategic defeat, psychological extinction." He hesitated before the final entry. Then, slowly, he keyed it in. "Advise all Ravager commanders. Avoid human space at all costs. They do not build warships. They build absolutes." The flagship warped away, vanishing into the void. And still, the Yorktown didn't move. Back aboard. The human ship, in a modest command chair surrounded by quiet officers and silent consoles, Captain Maria Santos closed the targeting interface. Her hand hovered for a moment above the main console before tapping a small, worn button that opened an old digital book. She didn't look back at the battlefield. She didn't have to. The void had been changed, not by conquest, but by design. The stars stretched on, cold and quiet, as if the galaxy itself had paused to absorb what had just happened. Where 300 Ravager warships had once floated with impunity, now there was only open space and the drifting remnants of vaporized hull matter, nothing more than heat signatures and scorched plasma trails, the ghostly aftermath of a single demonstration. The UES Yorktown remained at the edge of the Proxima system, still and silent, like a blade driven into the heart of the void. It did not pursue. It did not gloat. It simply waited. Inside the Yorktown's command deck, the atmosphere was quiet. Not triumphant, not relieved. Just quiet. The crew moved with practiced calm, monitoring systems, running diagnostics, ensuring that every weapon array was retracted and every defensive net reset. None of them spoke about what they had just done, because to them it wasn't extraordinary. It was procedure. Captain Maria Santos sat in her command chair with the stillness of someone who had seen enough of the galaxy to know that power used carelessly was weakness, not strength. Her hand turned the page of the old book in her lap, a biography, forgotten history, worn at the edges. She didn't glance at the displays. She didn't need to. Status? She asked softly. Commander Reeve, her XO, replied without looking. Away from his console. All Ravager signatures have cleared human space. Last warp trail confirmed 3 minutes ago. No pursuit. No contact attempts. Santos nodded. Any comes from Proxima? Civilian net is live again. No major casualties reported. They saw the flash, but no one's quite sure what happened. We're being hailed. News agencies, diplomats, analysts. Mute them, Santos said. They'll write their own version anyway. Understood. She closed the book and finally looked at the main screen. Nothing but stars now. Silent stars. The same ones that had once watched over empires. Now they watched something else. Reeve, she said, voice low, what's the Doctrine summary? For today's action? Reeve recited it like a creed. Minimal force. Maximum certainty. Strategic impact over tactical glory. Correct, Santos said. And the most important part? He hesitated. Then, with a glance her way, he answered, leave an impression, not a crater. Santos smiled faintly. Very good. Elsewhere, across subspace channels and encrypted relays, the story of the encounter began to spread. But it didn't spread as rumor. It spread as doctrine. Fleet Command, reviewing sensor footage and AI combat assessments, quietly elevated the Yorktown's engagement to Class Echo Protocol, existential deterrence. A level reserved not for war, but for messages. In the hidden chambers of high command, admirals and analysts reviewed data in silence. One projection showed the expected losses had the full Ravager fleet engaged. It was red losses in the millions. Another projection, the real one, showed the Yorktown's calculated first strike capacity, 294 ships, neutralized in the first 18 seconds. Complete annihilation in under 3-1. And they had fired just one shot. Should we reclassify the Yorktown as a fleet asset instead of a vessel? One admiral asked. No, came the answer. It's not a fleet. It's a Doctrine wearing armor. Meanwhile, aboard a hidden Ravager dreadnought far from the confrontation, a council of surviving warlords convened in shadow. The humans have changed. One said, voice full of unease. No, answered another. The humans have revealed. We just didn't see it before. They reviewed the battle logs, the scans, the message files, the weapon data. It didn't make sense. It wasn't just superior firepower. It was something more disturbing. Perfect information, perfect timing, perfect restraint. It was a civilization that had spent centuries not on war, but on understanding how to win without needing to fight at all. Should we prepare for retaliation? One asked. Warlord Kyx's reply came through a personal transmission. His voice raw and tired. Double quotes. No, you don't prepare for gods. You avoid their mountains. Back on the Yorktown, Santos rose and stretched her limbs. Her crew remained silent, knowing her next order before she even gave it. Resume patrol route, she said. Same pattern as before. The ship's engines came to life with a soft pulse, so quiet it barely rippled the vacuum. No fanfare. No march home. Just a simple course correction and a return to duty. Not one of them celebrated. They hadn't won a battle. They had preserved a silence. And in the end, that was the most powerful act of all. The stars turned, indifferent and eternal, as the UES Yorktown slipped quietly from Proxima, space leaving behind nothing but vapor trails and a silence too vast for explanation. News of what had happened had already begun to ripple outward. But it didn't travel like rumor or myth. It moved like a seismic shift in gravity, silent but undeniable. Across charted space, governments paused their simulations. Pirate fleets stopped transmitting. Entire alien empires suddenly found reason to recheck their assumptions. It was no longer a question of whether humanity could defend itself. Now, it was a question of how long humanity had been hiding. Aboard the Yorktown, the crew returned to their routine. No medals were handed out. No songs were sung. The ship didn't shine under a spotlight. In fact, most of the galaxy didn't even know what the Yorktown really was. Not yet, but some did. Far beyond any patrol line, buried within the intelligence sanctums of the Terran Defense Directive, a sealed chamber lit up as 6 figures gathered around a holographic table. They were admirals, strategists, and a single civilian historian. The file in front of them was marked Project Obelisk, Eyes O&L, why the footage played without commentary. It showed the full engagement at Proxima from first contact to the Ravager. Retreat, the weapon activation, the targeting scans, the warning shot, and then the disengagement. It didn't pursue, one of the admirals said. Not even when it could have decimated the fleet. Not even when it had justification. Because the Yorktown isn't designed to chase, replied another. It's designed to be seen, once. A moment of silence passed before the civilian finally spoke. It's not a weapon of war. They all turned. It's a cultural message, the historian continued, voice calm. The Yorktown is a turning point. The moment humans stopped responding and started defining, it's not just a deterrent. It's a symbol. What about the others? Asked Admiral Neddy. Are they active? The room dimmed as 5 more ships blinked onto the holographic map, each in a different sector. Each codenamed under Obelisk-class blackout vessels UES Yorktown, UES Aegis, UES Trident, UES Horizon, UES Warden, UES Solace. Only 3 have been deployed, the general answered. The rest remain in containment or calibration. We don't use them unless the message must be sent, and when we do, we don't fight, we correct. In deep space, far from human territory, a signal pinged off an old relay. A drone belonging to the alien syndicate received the data package. In less than 3 seconds, an emergency meeting was called by the Syndicate Council. The data showed every Ravager warship's kill schematic, complete with time-stamped evidence of the Yorktown's first volley and targeting calibration. It didn't look like a battle log. It looked like a finished plan that had simply not been executed, and at the top of the message, one line written in Galactic Common. This was not an attack. This was a warning. We are not interested in dominance. We are interested in balance. Step carefully. The Syndicate canceled its planned expansion into human trade routes within the hour. Elsewhere, in a corner of charted space long thought unreachable, the Dread Assembly, a collective of AI-war minds that once considered humanity inefficient. Flesh-bound anomalies rewrote its entire projection algorithm. They did not understand why a ship with that kind of power had not destroyed its enemy. They did not understand why humanity had built such a thing. But most terrifying of all, they did not understand how many more ships there were. Because if the Yorktown was only one, and if it hadn't even deployed its full payload, what else was Earth hiding? Back aboard the Yorktown, the stars drifted by on quiet screens. Captain Santos sat once more in her quarters, the soft hum of the reactor core vibrating through the floor. She poured herself a cup of tea nothing replicated. Real leaves aged in earth soil. She sipped and then turned her gaze to the old, leather-bound book beside her, flipping to a dog-eared page. It wasn't a tactical manual. It wasn't protocol. It was a book of poetry. She had always believed war shouldn't be the first thing a culture mastered. It should be the last. A soft knock at the door. Come in, she said. Commander Reeves stepped inside, holding a datapad. Ma'am, we've received a coded message from Earth. They want confirmation the Yorktown is still in position. Santa smiled faintly. Tell them we are. And tell them the galaxy knows that now. Reeve hesitated. Should we remain in the Proxima sector? No, she said, standing. We don't linger where we're not needed. She walked past him, slow and composed, like the stars themselves moved to her pace. Plot a new patrol route, she said. Quiet systems. Borderlines. Show the flag but not the fire, he nodded. Understood. As she stepped back onto the bridge, the stars greeted her like old friends. And the ship, without ceremony, began its slow journey forward. Not as a conqueror, but as a reminder, because some ships are built to destroy, but the Yorktown was built so that it would never have to dot. And now, across the galaxy, where fleets once roared and warlords once ruled, there lived a new silence, the kind that came only after a species showed its teeth, then smiled instead.